Feisworld podcast helps independent creators live their creative and financial freedom. I'm your host, Fei Wu, and I'll be taking you through a series of interviews with creators from around the world who are living life on their own terms. Each episode is packed with tactics, nuggets you can implement, origin stories to make listening productive and enjoyable. We're not only focused on the more aspirational stories, but relatable ones as well. We also have non-interview-based mini-series releasing throughout the year to help deep dive into topics such as freelancing, marketing, even indie filmmaking that will benefit creators like you. Show notes, links, and ways to connect with the guests are available on feisworld.com. Now, onto the show. Hey guys, it's Fei Wu, and welcome to another episode of Feisworld podcast. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to take a moment just to thank you guys because you may or may not know this, but about 75 to 80% of the listeners who stumble upon Feisworld every week is new. I know that stat is kind of crazy because I wish there were more returning listeners, but at the same time, I'm really grateful that we just started a new relationship. You know, this week with Allison Martin is going to be such a treat because I met her not so long ago, about a year ago, and we kept in touch. And she was introduced to me through her brother, Gareth Martin, who appeared on an earlier episode of the Feisworld podcast. And Gareth and I met through Seth Godin's LTMBA. We even had the opportunity to kind of cross the ocean and meet each other in person in London almost exactly a year ago in October 2018. But very soon after that, I found out that Gareth's sister, Allison Martin, was kind of working and living in Boston, and they both are originally from South Africa. I realized that Allison is in a very unique situation, and is just the type of person I want to invite onto the show because she is not only a female immigrant, but she's also a traveling entrepreneur. Check it out. She's the founder of UDoTest. UDoTest, that's right, the first company of its kind to help significantly reduce the unnecessary cervical cancer death in Africa. Following a mobile and tech career, Allison noticed the significant lack of accessibility to medical services and care across Africa. After the first few experiences of getting her pap smear, she figured that there must be a better and easier way for women to receive these tests, possibly in the comfort of their own homes. I cannot agree with this statement more. And as you can imagine, I think if you're a woman listening to this, I bet you want to look her up because I certainly did. UDoTest was the start of something digitally different in South Africa. And with the intention of merging tech, healthcare, and a much greater purpose all into one. The goal was to educate, increase awareness, and disease prevention. And it's kind of, in my 2 cents, Allison's way of giving back to the community and empowering women. After receiving several notable awards in South Africa, Allison decided to bring UDoTest to the United States in 2017. She traveled to different states, including the South, the West, and now the East Coast of America, Boston, Massachusetts to be specific, continuing to spread the word of UDoTest. Today, UDoTest offers a unique and sophisticated B2B, so business-to-business at-home disease testing SaaS platform. So if you're not super familiar with all the jargons and software terms, SaaS, S-A-A-S, means it's software as a service. And that is in partnership with leading global laboratories and physicians. UDoTest sets forward a personalized, comprehensive, in-network, lower cost, and life-saving at-home testing experiences for a wider population in North America today. But wait, what more will you learn in this episode? Allison shares her current journey as a 30-something-year-old female immigrant and traveling entrepreneur living in Boston, her successes and struggles as an independent creator and entrepreneur, running a business while adapting a new life living in a foreign country, how Allison manages to balance her career and a long-distance relationship with her boyfriend who still lives in South Africa, her decision for delaying having children, starting a family, and living a quote-unquote normal life. She also talks about her experience, which is freezing her eggs, the process, and the feedback, all of her experience completely on the table. So if you're a woman in your 30s experiencing some of the same thoughts, whether you're a traveling entrepreneur or otherwise, I think you'll find a lot of very useful information and in the context of someone who understands you. And that makes not just Allison, but myself as the interviewer as well. So before I close and let you get started with this episode, I want to share D.H. Lawrence' quote, which is that she bare children is not a woman's significance, but she bare herself. That is her supreme and risky fate. Without further ado, please welcome Allison Martin to the Feisworld podcast. Allie Martin, welcome to Feisworld.
Thanks, Faye. So lovely to speak to you again. I really, really love it.
Yeah, you know what's interesting, Allie, is the fact that I met your brother first through LTMBA, and you weren't even part of Seth Godin's LTMBA, but because you're here in Boston, and then he introduced us. And I noticed that the moment that we got introduced, it was funny. We sat down, ate a salad for lunch. Well, salads for lunch. We're not like that. You know, we both enjoy food very much. Oh my gosh. Like I met this woman in my 30s. And, you know, I know you're a few years younger than I am. And, you know, we have so much to talk about. We seem to be sort of on these, you know, even though different path, but somehow we can relate to one another.
No, I love it. No, absolutely. It is kind of, it was like friendship at first sight for me. I was like, oh my God, this woman is just so motivated, so inspiring. I can learn so much for you. And we're similar ages. And where have you been? It's amazing. No, I've absolutely loved it. Yeah, so grateful.
How do you, I wonder, I'm curious, like you grew up obviously with your girlfriends from childhood, kindergarten, grade school, and now you're traveling around the world. Like how many of those people are you still in touch with, or do you find sort of engaging conversations with? Or, you know?
Wow. So I'm actually very, very lucky. I've got an incredible group of girlfriends. And I'm actually in touch with pretty much all of them still. So really, I mean, my oldest friend, I met her, well, we became friends when I was 5. So, and we're still friends to this day. We went to the same schools, all that sort of thing. And I actually kind of sent her a text a couple of days ago. So I am actually, I think, very fortunate. I don't know if it's uncommon amongst women, and especially as we move on in our lives, but I'm actually very fortunate in that I do have quite a solid group of probably about 5 to 10 girlfriends. You know, some of them back at home, some of them have immigrated, but yeah, all kind of going through our various stages of life, and very fortunate to at various points, you know, still talk and touch base, and yeah, absolutely adore one another.
That's lovely. Is have moved away and still be able to keep in touch and. Today is like day and age with all the technologies surrounded. I think that's the one thing that technology actually brings joy to us, is to help us keep in touch with one another after all these years.
Absolutely. And you like make a plan, right? So, I mean, over here, obviously I'm 6 to 7 hours behind where all my friends and my family are. So you make a plan. You kind of get up a bit earlier, and I actually have like coffee. I have morning coffee chats to my friends, and it's lunchtime or kind of afternoon their time, so they're having afternoon lunch. So we have kind of those awesome catch ups, and you just make a plan. It's worth it.
It's so interesting to hear about immigrant stories. And recently, you know, the morning chats is what I'm hearing for the first time. One of my girlfriends is doing like dinner while she's actually eating dinner. She has her iPad open, talking to her mom who lives in China. And I was like, that's brilliant, because I rarely find those, even, you know, without kids, I rarely find moments where I'm not typing on a computer, when I'm not doing research. And, you know, when I'm eating, that's a perfect time. Like she could be eating too. Time-wise might not line up, but it's a lovely idea.
Definitely. Well, I mean, you know, the best times, like you and I, the best times are over meals, right? So we're having lunch together, and that's great. So what's the difference? I'm just having breakfast or coffee on my side, and my friends or my dad or whoever is having, you know, lunch or afternoon tea on their side. So it's just over a virtual connection, which is, just so much more special.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously you're not from around here. You gave that away pretty early on. You know, tell us about your origin. Like, where did you come from? And like, at a high level, you know, what was it like growing up in South Africa?
Yeah, cool. So it's actually, it's not, in some ways, it's kind of not too dissimilar to, I think, your suburban areas in the United States. I'm in my 30s, so South Africa had kind of gone through their kind of more kind of stressful times, and we were coming out of that. And I think my generation is like all kind of forward thinking and getting over that. But the point is, we stayed in a suburban area. We went to a public school, like a very nice school in our area. We were lucky in that, you know, we could walk to school and walk home. So similar to here where, you know, it's safe enough to do so. But that's not common. I mean, you know, in South Africa, you wouldn't kind of walk after dark or anything. And then I, you know, obviously South Africa is an interesting country in that, you know, we've got kind of, unfortunately, kind of vast disparities in our population. So we definitely have townships and shanty towns or whatever, but obviously the way they set up our country was quite divided. So we still had a suburban area, and our close group of friends, and all kind of multicultural at my time. So that was awesome. And really, thankfully, I would say not dissimilar to what you have here. Other than, I think, us being very conservative by nature, very more kind of closed, I would say, less trusting, and then just also, you know, because of the surroundings and because it's obviously not the safest place, you're kind of more closed, more to yourselves, I would say, in South Africa. Whereas here, people, I find, a lot more generous, a lot more open, a lot more naturally giving, and therefore it's kind of it's obviously a lot more freeing being here, if I had to compare it. And I think what I've been exposed to so far, I would say that kids here, they grow up taking ownership and accountability a lot quicker because they get onto buses, they walk around, you know, they walk home from school, they got like a lot of their own time. Whereas back home, because of safety issues or whatever, kids are a lot more nurtured and protected by their parents. They're a lot more anxious, that kind of thing. So long story short, I mean, it wasn't dissimilar, but I think it would be different now.
I think it's funny to hear that because what I'm constantly hear, around this location, I mean, New England and like even the majority of the United States, a lot of people complain. And I think to partially or largely that is true, which is, you know, people of an older generation, you know, 45, 50 and up, they grew up playing on the street. They walk themselves to school, back from school. And these days in the US, kids don't get to do that anymore. There's a lot of fear about like not just gun violence, all kinds of violence and, you know, things like that in general. And like where I'm living, if I look outside, I rarely, and it's sad to me because I remember growing up playing outside all the time, even though Beijing, from different parts of my upbringing, you know, wasn't necessarily the safest place either, you know, certain parts like downtown and such. But yeah, it's just like now I think in comparison, what you have witnessed is like, it's all relative.
Yeah. And I mean, now that we're talking about it, what's significantly different, obviously, is that we have walls around our homes. And it sounds weird, but obviously, like now that I'm here and I've been here for 3 years, and it sounds weird when I explain it to Americans, but it's kind of like we've got homes, but you don't see them because all you see are walls. And you know, my friends back home would be laughing at me because it's kind of the norm. It's like, well, of course you have a wall, you know, like, and until I think you've actually lived elsewhere and understand that, how restrictive that is, and you're really kind of enclosing yourself into your own little prison. But as a kid, you play outside, you do whatever you want, but it's just within your walls. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no playing on streets generally, because you're enclosed in these walls, which is quite strange when you go there as a tourist, actually, to see the difference.
I'm so curious. I mean, I have a lot of friends. South Africa has become this like a very tourist destination for Asian people for quite a long time. And I was surprised when first people like told me about it. I was like, what, really? Are you going to be, do you know what you're doing? Like which part of, and then they will take pictures and it looks like the most, parts of it, like at least the part that they went to looks very European and like looks just the same like everywhere else. So
yeah. No, it's gorgeous. I mean, honestly, we've got a beautiful I prefer Cape Town to Johannesburg, but it is magnificent. And I think if you've got, you can have an amazing lifestyle living in South Africa. And it's for a lot of bad news that I think it sometimes gets, it is an absolutely gorgeous place to be, to live, to raise a family. If you're just kind of street smart and savvy. And
figure that out. Yeah. A lot of that is prejudice, like totally, what we imagine. And even the stories, honestly, I hear from other people about China. I'm like, you should go. And like, seriously?
Yeah.
Go, you must go. I am, okay, I'm not offended because what you learn about, via textbooks and news, it's always like breaking news, something's happening. And you go over there, people are greeting you. They huge respect for you. And Chinese people love foreigners. They're, for years, decades, it's just a lot of curiosity about and in introducing them to the food. It's very welcoming. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So what brought you here? Oh my God. Like it's a gorgeous place. And, you came from a good family, had like, the safety growing up, and then you are here by yourself.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm very lucky. I've always kind of, for a large portion of my career, have been an entrepreneur. And I started my company, UDoTest. Originally, I started about 5.5, 6 years ago in South Africa. And really we received, we won several awards that, in 2016 that were pretty unexpected and pretty kind of remarkable. And we were like, oh my gosh, we basically do a specialized type of testing, medical testing. And really we make it super simple for people to test themselves and stay healthy and that kind of thing within a private home, easy environment. And I launched it really many years ago because I had to go for my pap smear. And I was running another business before this, and I was just like, I just can't believe women are still going for pap smears. And I didn't have time and couldn't kind of understand the importance of it, and really just started doing research and digging deep and going for meetings with doctors, pathologists, etc., to figure out, how can women start doing this themselves.
Wow. Hold on. So let's like take a pause right there. So you were, I think you were in your mid to late 20s when this got started and you had your pap smear. I mean, everybody hates it. Like, it's so funny. It's one of those things like I feel nervous, but then at the end of it, it's like, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But, even the conversation, just being in that environment, and it's very awkward. Like I remember the first time getting it done, I didn't want to go back to work. I was just like, I think I'm done for the day.
I think, I feel just a little violated. I'm going home.
Exactly. I was like, I think I need a rest.
Yeah, I need a rest.
Oh God. But I love where you see, but I went back home.
Yeah, I don't accept that. I'm just like, what ifs? I'm not doing this.
Yeah, you're like, no, I'm not going home. I'm going to future pap smear. So like, it sounds so natural to you, which is interesting because I talk to a lot of, I consider you also as a creative entrepreneur. It means that you don't have to be an artist, fine artist, or a musician or an actor. We have a lot of those folks here on the show. But what I find, exactly what you said just now, that is creativity in its purest sense, right? You had an experience, you're not alone. I just reaffirmed you. And you start talking to all these doctors. Like, could you give me like some insights of what those days were like? Literally, how do you reach out to doctors? Like, what are some of the questions you asked?
Well, first you sound like a total idiot because you're not you're not a doctor, you're not in healthcare. I was just running another tech company. All I knew was how to build stuff. And so you got to accept the fact that you're going to sound like an idiot to most people. And how did it start? I started reading a lot of clinical studies. So thankfully, and I don't know why, I actually just became obsessed with HPV. It sounds crazy, but I absolutely freaking love it. Like I love it. There's kind of like a clinical, but also a kind of technical side to HPV that I just became fascinated with. And then there's so many, there are hundreds of different types. And then it was like, what does this one cause? How does it, interact with these parts of the body? So for some other reason, I just like started reading about HPV and loads of clinical studies, and those can bore you to death fast. But they didn't for me. And then once I'd done that, then I was a little bit more kind of better versed when talking to doctors or pathologists. Not much, but a little bit. And really it was a matter of kind of picking up the phone, sending an email and being like, hey, at the time it was with Africa's largest lab. So your version of like Quest or LabCorp over here. And it was a case of like sending an email and like just being like, hey, Dr. So-and-so, I saw you on this website and, I'm interested in XYZ. Can you help? So it kind of started off as that. And then, obviously with each and every meeting, you get more comfortable and better versed and sound less like an idiot. And then, you get a lot of doors closed. A lot of people think you're a moron and a lot of people judge you and you lose faith and you think you're crazy. And then one person, literally one amazing professor in South Africa, I'll never forget her. She met with me and she said, Allison, I think you're onto something.
Yay!
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just like celebrating. Yeah.
Then
no more pap smears. Yay.
And then, that's it. That's all I needed in order to kind of quit everything, move cities and start and be like, great, let's go. So you just need one champion, one believer to give you that vote of confidence.
Isn't it crazy? Because same thing, right? Like with interviewing people on the podcast, I mean, that is like a very non-intrusive, like most people would just say yes, but still you get rejections, you get no's are not the worst answer. Some people just never respond or they don't, they don't say anything. And you as a beginner creator thinking through like, what did I do wrong? But you continue down that path and you have this tiny little platform and other people want to stand on this platform with you. I use the metaphor as like our coffee table at home. That's the size of the platform I had. And people decided to stand on it with me and, take a few risks to say the things they're not so sure. They're certain we're not. So how long did it take for having these lovely conversations to, meeting this woman? Like how long did that take till then? And what happened after that from like ideation to like...
I mean, I would say it probably took about a year,
for the conversation. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of a lot of research, a lot of thinking about it, but also because, it's a big step. I was running this other business, but for everyone else, they would be normally they have a job. So it's a big decision. So you got to get like the confidence and get to the point where you're ready to be like, okay, cool. Well, I'm going to minimize my hours here and I'm going to start taking up hours there. And we're going to actually start designing this product and this solution that is going to help like thousands of women. I think, within my life, I was going through like a specific change at the time. I think I was breaking up with a really, really interesting boyfriend. And
interesting in what way?
I know. yeah, inspiring, phenomenal. And so I was kind of ready to leave where I was physically, like the home where I was staying. So then I was like, okay, well, there's no better time like the present. Let's leave this boyfriend, and then let's move back to a place of growth. And at the same time, I was like, great, well, I'm gonna start this business. And I'd spoken to enough women, so do obviously your user research and that kind of stuff. Women were like, oh my God, you joking? Like a replacement to the paps now? Are you kidding me? Like I would have done that yesterday.
Yeah.
So you get like enough yeses, and then eventually you just can't stop thinking about it. It's something you literally sleep on every single night. Somebody is literally kicking you out of bed and just saying, do it.
Yeah. You remind me of this, like, people talk about the bedside manners. I remember when I first had this is like too much information, but hey, when
you can do whatever you want.
Right. And that's crazy because for me, actually, as like, Chinese immigrant, like, first of all, my mom never talked to me about that. Like, really just didn't happen until my primary care at the time told me like, oh, as a woman that you need to get this done, like over the age of 18 or something. Right. And so I was like, okay, what's involved? And I started to really picture it. And, you talk to your, dorm room, whatever, or your roommate, and it just like, and so I remember a decision that the doctor made was to, the device that they use. I remember they said, oh, we're going to use like the one we use for teenagers or something, like a young woman. I'm like, yes. I can tell you how happy I was, like, yes. And then for the past, 20 years, 15 years. So every time I go get it, every time I see a new doctor, it's like, do you have the teenage size? And then, it was so, you think about the mental, it's funny to talk about it now. And then this nurse came in and said, doctor, do you need the medium one with a large one? I said, medium. Oh, so dreadful. And then the doctor answered, there one was. Oh, no. So you never know. Yeah, like
joking. This is hilarious.
Yeah, seriously. The other, I was like, oh, that is really artistic.
The gold one from behind.
The gold one. Premium. Oh my God. So we reserved this only for Faye.
It's in a shrine behind his desk.
I didn't think about that. Oh my God. Oh, I think you read too much from Trevor Noah. Next career move, comedian. Oh my God. It's true. It's like for women to have to think about like this,
exactly
these things. And oh my God, the gold one. Oh, Hello Kitty. Oh God, this is like getting out of control. I love it. But I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for people like yourself to find areas and, find these pockets in the life that we live and trying to really make a world a better place, and I, oh my God, I'm like with tears right oh my God. Hot girl summer. Hi there, this is Fei Wu, and you're listening to the Feisworld podcast. Today on the show, we welcome Allison Martin, who was born and raised in South Africa, and she is the founder of UDoTest, the first company of its kind to help significantly reduce the unnecessary cervical cancer death in Africa. She is a traveling entrepreneur currently living in Boston, Massachusetts, and that's where we met. Well, I want to talk about like production because let's give people some clarity for the products you have. So I remember you have tests for HPV, STD, if I'm correct, and other tests you're also developing? Like, so now years later, you've gone through like this, to me, a suite of products. Like what are you working on right now?
Yeah. So, wow. So, I mean, our space has just like exploded over the past 5.5 years. And our business has changed. So, huge lessons learned, and, really just spent some time understanding the American market, which is obviously where I've been for 3 years now. And what we have now is essentially not only a much wider variety of tests. So clinically, the labs we work with are doing incredible stuff. Really kind of the world's leading laboratories are launching phenomenal things that we partner with, and we essentially design it within our platform and our service. But long story short, you can now screen for a huge amount of diseases and conditions from home, and including kind of chronic diseases, including diabetes, cholesterol, a full lipid panel, hormones, kidney disease, liver disease, like literally a huge amount. I mean, if anything, it's kind of not up to date on our sites. But what we do now is we actually work with your health plans and your enterprises over here in the US. And because we've got so much kind of not only IP and proprietary software that we've built now, but we've also got a huge amount of experience in diverse populations, and serving people who are in a rural population, or those who do have insurance, don't, etc. English speaking, non-English speaking. So really what we pride ourselves on is the actual user experience and designing something customized for you. And on the one hand, we're like obsessed with the consumer and with, in my world, the female, the mom, the busy executive, women who just need a goddamn break. And we're obsessed with kind of designing products specific for her, but also, for her to encourage her family. And then on the other hand, we've got this super powerful system. So it's something we put all our energy and cash and time and capital into, that makes it simple and allows a health plan or an employer or a lab or, anybody to really just, activate this type of service for their population easily. So the model's changed quite a lot, but also I think, we've gotten a lot smarter and a lot more niche in kind of how we offer it. It's awesome.
Well, you've only been in the US for about a year right now?
No. So in January, it'll actually be 3 years.
Oh, so wow. We have known each other for I feel like the majority of that, but possibly the past, or when do we?
Yeah, or a year. Yeah.
A year and a half. Gotcha.
Yeah, maybe a year and a half. When I came to Boston the first time, it was last year, August. Yeah.
I realized that Boston is not your first destination. That's why, because you were somewhere else. And
Yeah.
Gotcha. So now let's say most of the listeners still for this podcast are American or based in the US. So if they're thinking it's like ding, like something lights up as like, oh, I'm an executive woman. I don't want to go through this anymore. How then can they use the products? How could they track back to you? How do they take advantage of this?
Yeah, so typically, I mean, we're actually targeting your enterprises, your health plans, employers, your labs. So typically, it could be somebody who's either the CEO or in charge of innovation or in charge of kind of quality or cost savings or whatever at these organizations who we target. So not necessarily a direct consumer anymore. And those individuals can contact us on our website, www.UDoTest.com. That's spelled UDoTest.com. And essentially what we do is we design a fully fledged start to finish at-home disease testing journey on their behalf, which is pretty personalized and cool.
So, for example, like for someone like me, this sounds like it's attached to a lab, or perhaps it's for a consumer perspective, it's really attached to their health insurance provider. So it would be like in the US, it would be something like Tufts Healthcare, a Blue Cross Blue Shield. But I know you're still in development. Is it the case that this test perhaps isn't like open or available to the general public just yet.
Absolutely. So yeah, we changed that model a while ago, really, because what happened is we knew that individuals in the US wanted these types of tests to be paid for. You guys, health insurance here is ridiculously expensive, and essentially what we're testing are kind of fall within your prevention benefits kind of category.
Oh, yeah.
So we learned pretty quickly that we needed to get the stuff paid for as much as we could. And as a result, we spent like the past year working with your health plans and understanding that and getting them paid for. And as a result, they are the ones who would essentially invite you to this type of service as their member. Say, hey, Faye, thanks for being a member of Tufts. We really appreciate you and want to offer you convenience and privacy. And this is some super cool service that we now offer.
Wow. So I am accumulating some questions. I feel like I'm trying to pretend like I'm listening and meeting you for the first time, because sometimes it's hard when you interview a friend and you feel like you already have a lot of the pieces in place.
Yeah.
So, from the ideation to production, I think some of the listeners may be wondering, okay, that sounds amazing. You're already at this level. You're working with healthcare companies. What was it like for you to have these prototypes built? I'm not really an investor. I'm not really sort of a founder in that sense. Was there any like seed money that you had? Who supported you in this initiative, this project at the beginning to make it into a thing, like somebody can touch, see the results from?
Yeah, great question. And that kind of relates a little bit to the doctor I was referring to earlier. Essentially, all you need is one crazy person. That's it. So when we first started, I had one crazy person who I adore and has known me for about 10 years and was somewhat of a mentor, advisor to me in my previous business and telecommunications career and everything. And I'll help you. Obviously, I wasn't kind of drawing a salary or anything like that, but you need one person to just kind of support you in a small way financially, if you
so
need.
True.
And whether that's a family member, a friend, and in this case, it was my first really small investor. They to this day are sure one of the people I'm most grateful for in my life.
And what's I thought it was she at the beginning, that was he later on, was one or?
Oh no, sorry. It was just one. It was he.
Yeah. He, okay. Is this, if it's a mentor, is it possible to reveal his name that we can like thank him for? Mention him on the blog post?
Yeah, his name is Mark Attia, and he's quite a kind of prestigious South African executive, really, who I've known for 10 to 15 years.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Really.
These are the names that you may or may not hear from, but that having that someone believes in you, that one crazy person, which years later will be hundreds and hopefully thousands of crazy people who believe in you, right? To make it a reality. But I know it's always an uphill battle sometimes from that. Having the first prototype, iterating upon it, and then you have to decide how little money that you set aside for yourself while working with these technologists and builders to make it into reality. Could you maybe talk about that part of your journey? What was easy? What was perhaps most likely challenging during that part before you came to the US? Because we also want to talk about your journey since you have arrived in the US. But what was that?
Wow. So, like? Definitely some of the most challenging times were definitely meetings back at the time in South Africa. It would be meetings with employers, with your very powerful insurers over there. It would be typically your clinical people with respect. And back then, if you imagine, it was 6 years ago, so it was actual meetings with doctors and gynecologists. And typically, if you imagine the environment, where I already said South Africans are conservative, now throw in a gynecologist, they're even more conservative. So So that I think was the hardest is winning them over with this. And it took time and it was tough. And it's not only like a mixture of relationship and data and influences within that space, being a part of the journey, but it's a thick skin. You got to. You really just got to kind of brush off the nose. You're stupid. Who are you? You're kind of you're female, like whatever. And then you got to prove them wrong. And then, what happened is we actually launched, we launched with the product and, received a huge amount of publicity and all that sort of thing. And literally, I mean, we did it because cervical cancer is the deadliest cancer in South Africa. It then became like a huge motivator for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I know the solution is available. I technically would know how to execute. And now I've got even more motivation because now I know it's killing a stupid amounts of women in our country. Like, what are we doing? Like, now I just had to do it.
Yeah, wow.
So that was the fire that kind of kept me going. And I was like, I really don't care what this one doctor thinks. It's clinically proven, it's valid, it's supported by X, Y, and Z, it's listed on this, it's being done in this country. I'm going to do it anyway. Because I was so fired up to help women around me who were being impacted by it. But long story short, what was the hardest part during that time? It was the conservative, typically kind of medical community back home. Until we launched, we were helping women. We were helping women who saw our advertising in airports and didn't have time for a pap smear, and we're like, oh, this is the best thing ever. And then we started referring more women to those same gynecologists than anything else. So these women had no intention of going for a pap smear, no time, all that sort of thing. And they came back with certain high strains of HPV. And we actually sent them back to those gynecologists. And then everybody was our friend.
Wow. Everybody.
Yeah.
And how long did that take? That sounds like maybe 2-3 years in the making, if not longer.
Yeah, it took time. Yeah, it took easily kind of 2.5 years.
Yeah. Wow. So your credential, being a woman aside, you also you're not a medical doctor. You didn't really study medicine or chemistry or biology, that sort of thing. What did you study in college?
No. I literally studied a marketing degree. And yeah, I mean, I studied separate kind of mini MBA courses thereafter through distance learning. But I'd say one of the, at the time it was really tough, but one of the best things I probably did was change from going to traditional university, like kind of a physical presence, to studying distance learning.
Yeah.
So I continued my degree through distance learning and actually started working really young because of it. And I needed cash. I needed to pay stuff off. I paid for my own studies and started working at 19, in a corporate.
Whoa, you started working in corporate at the age of 19, ever since then? Oh, wow.
Actually young.
Oh, there's a lot I'm discovering I didn't know before. So I'm curious because I remember the recent, I'll make sure that you're off, and we'll wrap it up in 10 minutes so you have time to get ready and Thanksgiving dinner. I don't think it's going to take that long. Are you going to bike, by the way? Over to your house? Oh, perfect. All right. Then don't worry about it too much. So I just realized you live really close to Sam. You guys should totally catch the same Uber. Not to complicate things, I remember the most recent conversation that we had, and knowing that you're always super busy. We have lunch and dinner when we can, but there are times that you have to get on a call talking to investors, potential investors, VCs, and trying to close these deals. And I remember just some similarities of me running my own business, having to pitch myself to other people, where for them to kind of come through to say, hey, are we a good fit? And then you tend to sort of tell the same stories. But it was more painful for me in corporate because I was presenting somebody else's idea, case studies, whereas for Feisworld, for my business, it felt easier. What is the journey has been? What's the journey has been like for you? For let's just talk about maybe your Boston journey for the past year and a half. how do you motivate yourself to start and stop the conversation over and over again? Like, what was that like?
With investors?
Yeah. Like, how do you even find them? How do they find you? And like, what is that process like?
Oh my gosh. So literally, it is a case of hustling, like without sounding kind of like that is the easy way out. It is literally a case of networking as much as you can, getting involved in associations as much as you can, getting referrals as much as you can. You literally get into a rhythm. I mean, obviously, I've now been here for like 2.5 years, so I've adjusted a lot and I've learned a huge amount. But really, it's a case of I knew that I was a foreigner, and I knew that I didn't go to MIT, I didn't go to Harvard, and I'm not a part of the club. I'm not a male.
Yeah.
So I knew that I had to kind of work freaking 10 times harder just to get known and to get trusted and credible. So really one of the first things I did is I became a part of every association I could see that was going to be valuable. And I subscribed to it. I went to their events. I am on their databases. I'm kind of finding whoever I think is relevant for what I was doing. And that was like step one. It was like, okay, cool. They are like the top 10. So top 10 associations, dive in, go to the events, talk to people, ask the question, be like, hey, I'm doing XYZ, looking for Y. Can you help? Really being bold enough to just ask those questions. And one person, but one thing that was interesting for me when I moved here is I've just loved Americans, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it sounds maybe a little bit cliched or shallow, but like I was astonished, like within the first week of moving here, how I was introduced to somebody, I think through my incubator, and I would have one phone call with this person. This person was senior. He was a VC in San Francisco, and he was the kind of managing partner. And literally after 30 minutes, this guy said to me, he's like, Allison, sounds interesting. I'm going to introduce you to so-and-so. Literally 5 people on the phone. And I was like, oh my God, like who is this guy? I've never actually met him. Like, I don't know what he looks like. I've never shaken his hand. And to you, that sounds normal. You're like, Allison, what's wrong with you?
Connector, yeah.
Back home, no ways. Back home, oh my God, you would need 8 months of, like, no joke, 8 months of relationship with somebody. Very senior. For them to get to know you, trust you, like you, understand you, know your family. Yeah. And then they feel safe enough to send you to their network. So that's a fundamental difference that I was exposed to like in week 1. And that gentleman introduced me to 5 more people in his network. Yeah. And then what did I do? I phoned all 5 of those and then they expanded into the next 5. So that's a kind of cultural difference that we don't have in South Africa. We're a lot more conservative. And so long story short, it's literally a case of asking.
If you like this episode, please consider subscribing to the Feisworld podcast. In fact, this podcast is intentionally created for independent creators and creative entrepreneurs to celebrate their life. I hope that you'll find other stories that resonate with you. And guess what? If you don't, if you want some recommendations, please reach out to me. I am Feisworld everywhere. That is FEISWORLD. And I will see you at the end of the show. What are some of the things that you learned? Is it gesture? Is that warmth? Is it leaning in? Like, what is that like?
Yeah, interesting. So that's a good question. I would definitely say, is the person asking you questions back? Are they intently listening or are they kind of distracted by something else? Do they take your card? Do they give you a card? Too many times at conferences, everyone's like, oh, sorry, didn't bring my cards to this, so it's kind of a matter of detecting the real intent. And usually, I mean, I'm I try and always ask a bit of a curveball question in all of my meetings that people are kind of not expecting, so that I can really kind of test that. And if that's a personal question, I get personal quite fast actually. And, it'll be like, oh, so, kind of what do you do in your spare time? Or, if you have time, you ask certain questions that they weren't expecting to actually just test, are they freaking listening to you?
Mm-hmm.
And then, yes, I mean, how engaged are they thereafter? Can you joke with them? Can you build some kind of a quick personal connection that enables them to remember you?
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, I think it's a somewhat of a blessing in disguise that I am South African and female in some ways, and people remember that. So if you got something that's memorable, use it. Use it in a good way. So thankfully, through that, you remain memorable, but make sure you spend time on quality. So as you said, picking up on those subtle hints. Is this person genuinely interested, or are they going to turn around and walk away in the next 5 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
And then following up.
So
I think a lot of the stuff is detected after. So do they come back to you? Do they pick up your calls? Do they reply to your email, even emails?
Mm-hmm.
And there, you can detect, obviously, are they keen or not.
Oh, that's lovely. Think about that. Like, you get so much smarter, at least in this area and domain, to know so much more than compared to even you yourself, like a year or 2 years ago. This is lovely. I mean, I can imagine doing like a series of this thing with. I actually encourage you to consider doing your literally 5-10 minute podcast using something like Anchor.fm, like something you can speak right into your phone and say, this is like a journey of a journey of a South African female entrepreneur. And, I can make that mistake in front of you, which is like, everybody else is like,
I'd probably do it myself. I'd be like, this is the South American. Don't worry. That is
see, like, that's the thing. Like, we in Chinese, there's a term is like global to like village. Like, we call it like a global village. Like, we're all in this together, and you can access different parts of the world so easily these days. I want to make sure that I don't delay your upcoming quick trip too much, but I want to just touch base and have the opportunity to discuss with you, because I recently recorded the video. It's not, as of the recording right now, it's not published or live on YouTube, but the topic is like basically, tough conversation. A lot of my Asian female friends asked me, they promoted me to talk about being Asian, over 35 and child-free. And you don't have to be 35, but like literally the moment that you hit 30 or even in your late 20s, right? Everybody around you is like, who's your boyfriend? What's his family's like? When are you going to have kids? How many kids you're going to have? When are you going to get married? And, so like we talked about that for a bunch of hours. Like, what's your vision and your take on that in general? Like, how much of your life do you spend thinking about it?
Oh, very little. Probably I should think about it more. But I do think I do think that women go through an unnecessary amount of pressure. There's something that happens. We all know, like when we turn 30. I don't know if it's society. I don't know if it's kind of previous generations. Like whatever it is, we just feel an overwhelming amount of kind of pressure that 30's the time that you're supposed to bear kids and have a husband. But then the funny thing is that I turned 30 and then my life carried on.
I woke up 30. I
was like, oh my God, I'm one day over 30. And it's okay. Like nobody approached me and said, where's your child? So life carried on. I think another interesting thing, I mean, obviously at that time I was obviously moving to the US. So I was being exposed to other stuff. And I wasn't within the same circles that I was who are more expectant of that. And, I was totally distracted by my company, and I love what I do. So like I had this fire in me to do this, and I'm dating an amazing guy, but I knew for a fact that because of my business, I was like, I'm not even mentally prepared to have a child now, even if I was married. So it was for me, it was just like a logical decision. I was like, God, I'm like getting my company running. It's like so great, so fun.
So great.
Like, why would I do this even if I was married? So really, I mean, I did freeze my eggs. We've spoken about it, and I've got like nothing to hide. And really, because it was empowering. It took me a long time to decide. It wasn't an overnight decision at all. I think it took me a year. But what was going on is people. I knew girls who were struggling to have kids, and they were older than me, but it was a very sad situation. Some of them were struggling, and really, I mean, I've been exposed to a lot of medical stuff in my life. My mom is a nursing sister, so we've been exposed to the challenges of fertility, and I was just like, I know now that I don't want to have kids now, but I don't want to not have the choice later. So I really kind of slept on that, and at the time I was like hugely religious, not huge, but like I was following a path, and so it was like kind of against mini grains that I had at the time. It was like, I'm kind of like this is a little bit not natural. And then eventually something cracked, and I was just like, hang on. I was like, I'm thinking of it from the wrong perspective. This egg freezing thing is really an insurance plan. That's what this is. Yeah. And I was like, I've got a decent car. I've got insurance on the car. It makes logical sense to me. So this is what egg freezing is. It's insurance on me for a future date. And so once I'd like switched the perception, I was like, oh, but then it's a rational decision. There's nothing like emotional about this thing. Let's just get it done.
Yeah.
So I the procedure, I don't know how much detail you want, but like, it was pretty, once you make the decision, it was pretty kind of easy going. The procedure was easy going itself. It was like only kind of 15 minutes. But the injections itself.
Leading up to the procedure.
Yeah, there were injections that you take, I think, like 2 weeks ahead of time. And that's pretty interesting. And you feel like a bit kind of groggy and uncomfortable or whatever as this happens.
Was it tolerable? Or was the pain and like discomfort, not just sharp pain, but was it discomfort, the pressure, like tolerable for you? Like
totally tolerable. I am not an injection person at all. Like for a person who is now actually advocating blood collection, I absolutely hate it.
There were tiny needles, I heard.
Yeah. So they're tiny needles, and you put them in the side of your stomach every day. And so that was the worst of it. And I think for me, someone who literally faints at the sides of that, I think I fainted once. It was fine. Like that was the worst part about it, is really these daily injections. For sure, you feel, you just feel kind of bloated or whatever. But then the procedure itself was totally harmless. I think I fell asleep and like woke up and it was all done. And it was like all in all 15 minutes and fine.
And life went back to normal. Like you felt normal immediately after, or it took like a week or two to feel okay?
No, I mean, I think there was like discomfort when you go to the bathroom, but honestly, like nothing terrible. And then I think within a few days that was fine. Yeah. Completely like harmless. Like I think the biggest thing for me was kind of mental. I try and rationalize it back then, and I was like, well, this is insurance; it's going to make perfect sense. But I underestimated the impact it would have, and it did have on my life.
Yeah.
So now that I've obviously look back, and I'm very grateful that I did do it. Whether I need it or not is another story completely. But I was amazed at the way it just freed me up.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was like a game changer. Suddenly you're like not feeling this need. I was like, oh, thank God, like I don't have to get married at 30. I don't have to find the nearest male and start breeding. Like I don't have to feel this pressure anymore.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I can actually plan my one-day family. Like literally, I can be like, okay, cool. At this age, I'm going to do this. I can start then, have a kid then.
Yeah.
Like I could literally tabulate my life. And that for me was a game changer. Absolutely freeing. I can like go forward with confidence and like guns blazing.
I feel like I'm being freed right now. I'm listening to this story.
I feel like some clinic has got to pay me to be their sponsor. Seriously.
I know. I know a lot of women who started their own family to say maybe they didn't really like the ones that they were born into, and they want to create this perfect home, having multiple kids, and they want to be the best influence, most positive influence. And I think obviously that belief is absolutely beautiful. A lot of people are succeeding at it. But also I think about the path that we're on, think about the path you are on in particular, like think about how many thousands of women and easily, hopefully tens of thousands and millions of women's lives you're going to change, right? It's that not just that one day in their life, but it's something they will do on a regular basis and, changes their perspective, their expectation leading up to that appointment or whatever they need to get done. Now they can just be comfortable. They can be home. And as I can see this really what you're doing to really expand to certain other parts of the world, like Asia, for example, where women don't have even the access to go to a hospital, even if they wanted to, or too expensive. So, yay, go Allie! Team Allie fan, yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been an incredible journey, but that's the goal, right? The goal is to help those who really need it. It's to help those populations who can't, who don't, who are scared, who haven't, who are not allowed to, are anxious. It's to help those the most. So try and make the small difference that you can in whatever way you can. And if you know that you can, just do it. Have the courage to just try.
Absolutely. Yay. Now we can have the courage. Today's Thanksgiving during the recording. And I think it's so lovely that we're talking about this. I think this is the spirit of Thanksgiving, to give love to one another, and not just to your family, but, like a community. This episode of the Feisworld podcast is brought to you by Feisworld LLC, our marketing service agency created for independent creators and businesses. We offer website development, video production, marketing mentorship to people who want to tell better stories, level up, and create a profitable brand. Feisworld podcast team are Chief Editor and Producer Herman Ceballos, Associate Producer Adam Leffert, Social Media and Content Manager Rose de Leon, Transcript Editor Alina Ahmedova, and lastly myself, the creator and host of Feisworld. Thank you so much for listening.